That would never happen. They would the first time would be the charm. All right. Hello. We're back again for another Wet Ink Wednesday. I am Matthew Orr of Wet Ink Games, and I have on the other side of the line here Misha Bushyager, who is a designer, an editor, a sensitivity editor, and very former host of the Ennies, creator of O-Run, contributor to Haunted West, like all kinds of credits, all kinds of achievements. Misha, thank you so much for saying yes to being here today.
Yeah, it's good to have it. Good to be on.
Yeah, I don't know. Is it is it good or bad to hear like all of your credits condensed down into like three
It's a little
sentences?
weird. It's
Like,
always a little odd. It's like, oh, that yeah, and like I keep forgetting to like sometimes I forget to update my CV on my website, and so it's like,
mhm.
oh, I should do that.
Yeah, that's actually one of my questions is like, which of these forthcoming projects are still forthcoming? Which ones are out now? Is it we'll get to that at the end. But first I want to ask you, because I haven't talked to you before, like what is your entree into the industry? Like, is it are you like lifelong gamer? I learned at my uncle's knee, like I've been playing forever,
Uh,
or is it like, no, I was in college and it was a class and I was introduced to it this way, and then now like I don't know, like what's
so I was sitting waiting for Mortal Kombat to start at the local theater in Atlanta. And I didn't have a car. My buddy didn't have a car. So we took the train up. And so we got there like an hour early and we're sitting in the food court waiting for the movie. And we look over and there's another table and there's these guys and they have books and they're like doing stuff. And I'm like, I recognize one of them from school. So I'm like, hey,
mm.
what you doing? And they're like, oh, we're getting ready to start an Earth Dawn campaign. Would you like to join? And so I started playing Earth Dawn with these guys on like Saturdays. And then just playing games since then. That was like freshman year of college. So
Okay,
like
okay,
30 years ago.
yeah,
And then playing led to running and running led to running into people. Then people say,
right.
hey, would you like to write something for us? And we're like,
Right, because
sure.
as soon as you're running, you're probably a game designer at that point. Like,
Yeah, pretty much.
and so then do it for real, or not for real, but do it
Yeah. Do it
where
for,
you get a credit for it, instead of
no,
just for
yeah.
your home table. Uh all right. I mean, that's lovely. I love, this industry has so many people who come in with the big dragon game, and so I love somebody who's like, my first game was not that, my first game
Yeah,
was
I mean,
something
I've
else.
played less. I think the Big Dragon game is the game I've played the least set of games, and that's like including like little tiny indie games because it just wasn't one that my groups tended to click with.
Hmm.
I play a ton, like years of Rollmaster and Warhammer Fantasy
Oh,
and
so like quite
Dungeon
chunky
World. Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, but never D&D just didn't work for us. It's like,
Huh.
it was
Yeah.
okay. uh, it's fine.
Yeah, I
But
mean, I
yeah, so
guess,
yeah.
30 years ago has to be like second edition age, I guess, right?
Yeah, I think my first was the one that had the CD in it in the player's guide, so you can make the characters. I think that was three three or 3.5. I'm
Okay,
not
okay.
sure.
I
Was the first
I
edition that I played.
whatever it probably wasn't three, because I don't remember that. That's the one that I
Yeah.
played. That's was my start for the
Yeah,
D&D
I
was
remember the
three.
CD because it had the
That's,
character
oh
generator on
man.
it.
You're sending me
It,
back to like,
it was at least 25
1998
years.
here, Misha. Like
Yeah,
that was
yeah,
just
that's
every book came with a
about
CD
when.
in it. Like
Yeah,
that was the new hotness.
yeah. It was
Oh
funny. So
man.
my undergrad was in computer science.
Okay.
And so for my senior projects for two of my classes, I coded a Rollmaster character generator because that was a giant pain
It
to manage a character sheet. So I
like
was like, hey, let's make this easier. So I had like
mm,
a database for one
well,
class, and I had the front end for the other class. Can't find it now, of course.
mm,
Uh,
mm,
it's on a
that's
CD somewhere.
sure. Not a stack of punch cards. That's
No,
well,
no, no, I'm not that
that's
old.
um well, the past compresses down into the, when it's old, it's just everything's old. The I was gonna ask you about the internet. Now you've got like, games like Morkborg or whatever, and
Mhm.
Mothership, that they've got the websites where you just go and like click character and then like it's all there.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what you were trying to make for Rollmaster, or was it just like
It was more
form
the
fillable PDF before
it
that
was
existed?
more yeah, it was more form fillable PDF. So like because like Rollmaster was you had like 200 skills that you had to
Oh
like
my goodness.
update the like okay as your stat went up so did your skill level, and so trying to just figure out what I needed to roll on any given day. It was like all right, and so like it had all right, you can check these boxes and we'll put these on the front page, but then you can still search the rest of them to find everything else. And yeah, it was a lot.
I I don't remember how many. I played a lot of Riffs when I was coming up, and
It
Riffs is similarly dense with skills. Every book adds
yes,
more skills, and they're all hyper
yes.
specific. And so there was somebody on the internet making fun of like the different like levels of cowboy. There's not
Yeah,
just
cowboy
one
versus glitter
cowboy.
boy, it's not the same.
Well, no, no, not even that, but like rope tricks and like riding tricks and shooting tricks are all like within the
Yeah,
cowboy skill system. And, they're like, who needs this many skills? And it's like, well, if you're playing like a crazy cyborg cowboy, maybe you want to have better rope trick
maybe,
skills. But
maybe
again, like,
you never
yeah,
know.
there's
Yeah,
hundreds of skills. If you put them all together in one big book, which they did do, like
which
the
they did.
dungeon,
Yeah.
it's got, hundreds of skills. And so yeah, definitely I remember searching through the giant book of like all the hundreds of skills and like what's the perfect secondary skill to choose for my characters,
Yeah.
or my it's there's a I don't know. I won't call it wasted hours, but it is like it's
No, no,
definitely
it was
like
it
a
was a
time.
lot of extra effort that looking back, well, like I tried to make a World of Darkness character relatively recently, and I'm like I used to be able to like crank him out, like it's like oh
Sure,
sure, we're
sure.
gonna make a werewolf, da da da. I want these skills. Like I had to like actually sit down and like look for like the not the skills, but like the pluses and minuses, the
Mm.
bonuses, like look through all of them to like, and then do math. And I'm like, I don't have the patience for this. I
Just
told the person who's like, here, this is what I want to play. Give me a character that does
mm.
this, and I will play it. But I don't have the brain power to make a character in the system anymore.
Well, it's the you'd get back up to speed, I think, if you haven't done it in a
Yeah,
while.
bro. Yeah,
But
if I did it regularly again, I could do it. But yeah, I don't do it that regularly. I don't do that crunchy that regularly
yeah,
anymore.
I mean, neither do I. I mean, I haven't
Yeah.
played that kind of a game in I don't even know, 5 years, 6 years, something like that. I mean, it is. It's not like an era of my life that's over necessarily
Yeah.
because it
Yeah.
still informs what I'm doing, but it's like it's such a specific thing that like a certain generation of gamers had,
Mm-hmm,
that
mm-hmm.
whether they were playing Rifts or second edition or World of Darkness or Rollmaster, bless your soul. But the we this is I don't know, this is not unplanned. This giant nostalgia dump has was not what was on my notes, but like we played Hackmaster for a while, which is the spoof
Mm.
of Rollmaster that makes it even more dense and complex. And we played it for a while because it was sort of unwieldy,
Yeah,
and that's
once
kind of
you
the
look, once I've made a character, I'm not making another one for a while in this system.
we got to survive. We got to survive a little while. Um, all right, so like I think like you're not necessarily known as a creator of these sorts of games. I mean, still there are people who are making crunchy games,
Mm-hmm.
but you're not necessarily known for that. I mean, Outrun it's got
Yeah,
D10s and
Arrivals
like
are
it's in
balance
there
between
somewhere.
crunchy and not crunchy because I'm very much not a crunchy person. Like I've played a play by post game where we literally do not have dice, and we've been playing it for since before Trump got elected, so at least 8 years now.
Yeah, wow.
Uh,
Wow.
and no, like yeah, no rules. Just hey, wouldn't it be cool if?
Yeah.
And that's our game.
I mean,
So
there's nothing wrong with that, but like
yeah,
but
and
so
that is perfectly valid style. But yeah, I appreciate that some people prefer to have like, yes, I have lists of things that I can do so that I have more concrete
Mm,
examples of things, as
yeah.
opposed to like kind of the more less crunchy freeform kind of styles that I tend to gravitate towards. So Oren was the balance between me and Jerry and Aloy going, all right, we kind of you're super crunchy and I'm super not crunchy. We gotta work to this so that we can both run and play this game at the same time and be the same game.
Right.
So
Right.
that was our happy medium, is what we came up with.
So before, I mean, you could tell me more about Run and the origins of New Agenda Publishing and stuff like that in a second here. But like, is there a game or a particular set of games that put you off of the role master path into the more narrative game path, or is it just
Yes
a
and
natural
no.
evolution?
So I graduated college, moved away from Atlanta where I'd been living, and that's where like my gaming groups had been based. And so we had been super, that group of guys tended to be super grungy. And then I like had a hiatus for a while because I didn't want to be the creepy person who like went to college campuses to look for
Yeah. Yeah.
gaming groups because they're
That's
weird.
good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Understandable.
So then I had like a couple of kids, and then like it wasn't until I'm literally sitting at the playground at my kids' daycare watching the kids play, and I look over and there's a guy with a gaming book, and I'm like, I recognized it as a gaming book. I'm like, that's
Hmm.
a gaming book, and so I
Hmm.
struck up a conversation. Turns out it's Daniel Levine. He lives a couple of blocks from me. His kid and my kid went to the same daycare, and so that got me back into gaming. And then the games that were in the groups that I ran into now tended to be the more indie style freeform games as opposed to the crunchier. I mean, there are still some like I still occasionally at cons play crunchy games and that kind of thing, but the stuff we tend to bring to the table in my groups tends to be a little less, a little more freeform.
Yeah. Yeah, I liked what you said earlier about like the crunchy style of game being like a list of like, here are 25
Mm-hmm.
things I can do. I know I
Mm-hmm.
can. Here's the percentage of chance of success of all of those
Yeah.
things. Like that is sort of a like I said scaffold, right? But it's like it, it is kind of useful, helpful, refreshing. I mean, it's not a bad way to play when you're
Yeah, it's
like,
not a bad
here's
way. Yeah.
here's the character sheet, here's the things you can do, and um, as opposed to the like, the something who somethings, that sort of construction about like
Yeah.
you've got those 3 points, and that's so much looser, right? And like, well, I'm
Yeah.
gonna argue that this is because I'm a I don't know, a flying turtle who schmoozes with royalty, right? Like that I should have this power or whatever. I don't those that was a terrible
Yeah.
character. Terrible character. Flying turtle who schmoozes with royalty. What a I don't know why that's what
Hey,
came out.
I think if a flying turtle appeared, that a royalty would totally be interested. I would
That's
want
right.
to, especially a
That's right.
talking flying
Right.
turtle. Like Harry would be all over that.
I think I would turn all of that into like yeah, it would be like that character would end up being like the face diplomat kind of thing where it's like, oh, I've been in this kind of situation before. So anyway, again, I've got distracted from my point. The idea being that like you're it's a different sort of scaffolding, I guess, of like that sort of looser play is like it allows more in some respects, but then it also like kind of gives you less and expects you to bring a little bit more. And it is a balancing act to kind of get that right when you're trying to get the right tone of a game, like
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of the 200 word RPG
Mm.
challenge that and that almost always relies on like you're in this kind of a movie, great, okay, picture it now, this is the game, right? Because so they
Yeah.
don't do any world building, there's no character setup,
Yeah.
there's because it relying on you knowing that context. So and some people, if you don't know that context or you can't
Yeah.
perform like that on the fly, it is hard. So I don't know. So that balance. So then, yeah, I think of O-Run as sort of like not. I don't want to like say magnum opus, right? Because it's not like the pinnacle of your career necessarily. Because I'm sure you've got other great projects that are in the works. You could tell me about them in a minute, but like, it does seem like kind of one of the big things that you've
Mm.
done is Orun. So talk a little bit about where that came from, and you mentioned Eloy and Jerry, and like I've spoken to both of them before, and you know they're great, but the,
They're fun.
I mean I think like Eloy is like my second credit in the industry or whatever is on one of Eloy's projects. So like, you know, he and I know him from
Yeah,
way back,
one of my
right?
early credits was for Lloyd too. I worked on Part-Time Gods
Yeah,
years ago.
yeah.
But yeah, so guess it was
I mean, I don't want to make it too facile,
98,
but
99, somewhere in there.
okay.
We're like, hey, we should, well, still in the days of G Plus, we had a smaller community for Black gamers and for
Sure.
Black game designers. And out of that, it was like, hey, we should work on something. And Jerry Aloy and I were the ones that ended up actually like doing something out of it. So like we was like, okay, well, what do we want to do? It was like, okay, I'm kind of drawn to this, and I'm kind of drawn. It's like, all right, what we like kind of just kept throwing ideas out, and what finally stuck that resonated with all of us was space opera. That kind of like giant star building, like exploration, fighting, like Jedi's, like Star Trek, and negotiations and politics.
Right.
And so what eventually we were like, all right, well, what are we gonna do? So we sat down and we're like cobbled out a like kind of rough idea of like what we wanted it to do. Like came up with some names, like, all right, well, what do we want to call it? And like some of the early names were weird. I don't remember them all, but I remember them being really weird. And then it was like, okay, well, what are we gonna name ourselves? That's where like, all right, we got to take the piss a little. I'm like, we should naps, because like in Black culture, naps are the like little tiny curls in the back of your head that never lay down flat. And so we're like, we should, and so like then it's like, all right, well, let's do a riff off of
So
that.
it's a backronym?
It is. It's a backronym.
Oh man. I had no idea.
Yeah. If you know, you know, but if you don't, you don't.
I didn't
Yeah.
know. I assumed that like the new agenda was like
Yeah.
like kind of what the whole project is about.
So yeah, it was totally a backronym to into a new agenda. It's like, okay, well, what kind of like what can we? Oh, new agenda. That's good. And so that's how New Agenda Publishing started. And then yeah, we put out a mission statement, and we did a call for authors, and we were trying to make sure we picked like people we had who hadn't been heard from before, not just in
Right, that's
where
the
they
new
came
agenda,
from,
right?
but yeah, it's like we wanted to represent people whose voices hadn't traditionally been heard, but also, hey, let's pick some new people. Like, yeah, we like the people that we have heard from before. Like, Aloy's got a catalog for a mile long. Jerry's got a catalog a mile long. I've got a catalog a mile long of stuff I've worked on. But let's hear from people who haven't had that exposure yet. And so like we put out a call, had people write stuff, came up with a good list, and we did a blind like reading. Like we didn't like look at names or anything, just like, all right, we're just gonna look at straight what they sent, and then like back looked at, okay, well, these are the samples we liked. Oh, hey, look, it's like all femme or person of color or queer. How did that happen? Gee, I wonder. And so yeah, we ended up with a great team. Did the Kickstarter, world blew up, had all kinds of fun, like Aloy rewrote the freaking system twice because that's Aloy.
I was gonna say that's what he does.
Yep. And finally got it published out. We're actually starting to do. We're in the beginning stages of doing like the first supplement to it, so that'll be later. We haven't quite ironed out all the kinks and like figured out exactly what we want to do.
Right.
It's probably gonna be like a worlds book, but
which makes sense because you've got the space opera narrative. Like you've got to have the creepy planet and the planet of like all robots and the planet of that's got 3 suns and everybody's covered in feathers and floating or for whatever reason,
And that was the other thing. We wanted to make sure that nobody in the system was human. So like all of the species that you can play are alien. Just because like we didn't want to have to deal with the whole, okay, well, the black humans and the white humans, like, no, we're just not gonna have humans. Just no. And so we ended up with like, oh, there's like the jellyfish group, and there's the like insect group, and the weird people that are like contained in spacesuits because they're energy beings, and it was a lot of fun to like just throw weird
Yeah.
crap out there and see what stuck.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's really great. And of course the art really conveys some of that like it like it's like not ethereal, but it's like adjacent to ethereal. Like the art
it's
style,
otherworldly, yeah.
it makes it very everything is filled with light and floating
Mhm.
for the most part.
Mhm.
Not floating, but like, it has a feeling of lightness to it for,
Mhm.
the cityscapes and the ships and the people are all they're all sort of conveyed in this sort of like, yeah, this is a
Yeah.
sci-fi game, kind of way,
Yeah, yeah. We got really
so
lucky with the artist too. Yeah.
yeah.
So
Yeah, and so I'm fascinated that this is like a started in 98 kind of project because like I think it was not in print until
wait, sorry,
like
not 98, 2018. My
tw
bad.
okay, okay, okay.
I
Because
said the wrong words because I forgot decades.
well, it's fine, but like even okay, that makes much more sense
Yeah,
timeline wise
yeah,
but
because
if it's been
yeah,
like because I could easily imagine like the first conversations are meeting in like the 90s on the internet and then like we should do something, but like it takes sometimes a long time to do something, So okay, so
yeah, sorry.
2018 to
Yeah,
2021 is much shorter of a timeline. Okay, never
yeah.
mind. Um,
Yeah, my bad.
no, it's fine. I mean, I love it. I love
Yeah,
I have not read every word of it, but like it is something that I've skimmed through and I've heard you play it with people on podcasts and stuff like that because I love an actual play. And so I'm familiar with it and I got to sell it at the booth. I feel like that was another like time when I think we were talking about this. I don't think we turned on the recording yet, but like all the times when we like almost met each other or like
yeah,
were
yeah.
in the same circles
I was
at
supposed to go
different
to this
times.
con, and then something happened, and so I
Well,
didn't. And so
right.
a lot
So
of that too. Yeah,
I believe it was PAX Unplugged in 2021. It
yeah.
was
I
like
get
the book
COVID.
was out, and then somebody like that I didn't know like came up and like, "Hi, I've got a bag of books that Misha told me to give to you." And I'm like, yes, she was supposed to give me books. So here,
Yeah,
hello,
I came
person.
down with COVID that year, and so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to be responsible and not expose everybody else, but I need to get this bag of books. So my friend who was supposed to ride up with me, I'm like, here, will you take the books? And so I left them on the porch, and they picked them up from the
Yeah,
porch,
yeah.
and they drove them up.
It's in some respects like a I don't know that's like a comedy of errors. We can laugh
Yeah,
about it now, right? But like
yeah, yeah. I was devastated at the time. Like, yeah. So
but but it's one of those things where like I like just in praising the book, right? I've sold the book. I've had to direct people's attention. I gotten to direct people's attention to it, so it's something that I'm familiar with. So and you're working on more stuff. That's cool. That's cool. And I mean, really, this is like I don't want to again, this is what I told you. Like I like have like a narrative that I've constructed where you're like, okay, so this is happening. This was our big push. Like the new agenda is here. It's the three of us people, and like we're gonna make the cover black, and you're gonna like it or not. And
we did
like,
consider that.
I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a highly melanated cover for your book. It is
Yeah.
not it doesn't have a space battleship on it. It's just like a
No.
very brown, shades of brown presence. And you were talking about the years and it was unsurprising, right? Given that it is 2021 when the book actually came out, that those were decisions that you were making or whatever. So like there's a read of the situation that like we're gonna muscle our way in and take up space and that kind of thing. But then again, I'm constructing a narrative and you can tell me that it's wrong here in a second. But like then a lot of your other credits are like, well, I did like the sensitivity editing on all of these other books, and like I've been an editor on these things, and like it's almost like that's the project where you're like out there in front and like, no, this is a project with a new agenda. And then a lot of your other work is like, but I don't have to be the one in the front line on these other projects. I'm going to be quietly helping move all these projects forward, and racking up a lot of credits as sort of like not necessarily the one who's like got to wave the flag at the front of the line. Is that
Yeah.
it? Is that it, was that intentional? Did that happen? Am I even reading the situation correctly? But
So
like it,
I
because it's
describe myself as a loud introvert. I I can be the face when I
mm,
need to be, and I tend to like people. This is like the weirdest. No matter where I am, if people don't know what they're supposed to be doing for some reason, they think I'm the one who knows what they're supposed to be doing. So I end up doing a lot of leading by default as opposed
mm,
to by choice. Arun was definitely one where it was like leading by choice, and helping drive it from like soup to nuts. So like from the beginning, this is what we want. This is where we're going. But yeah, most of my projects are more, hey, so and so already has an idea. Can we get you to help flesh this out? Or hey, so and so did this thing. Can we get you to look at it and tell me, is everything cool here? And I'm fine doing that. It's they're different sides of the brain, and
mm.
certainly the working on smaller parts works better with like my general life than than the no. I have to
Well,
be all in all the time.
Well,
Uh,
that's part of the story
yeah,
too. Like, life changes or whatever. Like, look,
yeah,
I had 3 years to be on this project, and then life means that I have to not be the one at the front of the line, or
yeah,
not at the front of the line, but to the head of the march or whatever.
yeah.
Uh, and- and the other thing I forgot to mention in that, the panels. Like, I see your name coming up in the panels all the time. You're frequently like giving advice and telling people, like you said, like you say you don't know why people think you know what you're talking about, but like you're always on the panels that are
I mean,
like,
even in non-gaming situations is what I meant.
okay, okay.
Like we'll be in a kitchen somewhere. It's like, hey, what? Yes, I actually know how to cook, but that's not the point. You don't know that I know. Or like organizing volunteers at my kid's
Mm,
school for something. It's like, yes, I know where to go, but why do you assume I know where to go? Kind of
just
things.
yeah,
Yeah, I
you must
my husband
exude.
calls it the air of competency.
That's
Apparently,
yeah,
and I'm
you
like,
exude
thanks,
confidence and
awesome.
like uh yeah, so I guess um so what is the so I have I so I asked you if I could tell this story a little bit, but like in 2020 you did a blog post, which I don't even know how I found it. I don't know if I saw it linked on like Mendez's website, or I don't know how I came to it, but you wrote this blog post, and like it's your story to tell, and people can go find it if they want. But like the thing that I took away from it was, and related to what you were just talking about, is like you were like, don't come at me with some weak, half-formed plan. If you're going to talk to me about a project, like, no, like, have your stuff together before you come talk to me, right? And it was specifically directed at like, mediocre white dudes who are just want to like draft on my competence, right? And I'm like, oh man, am I a mediocre white dude? I better make sure that I have my shit
It made a
together
lot of people
anytime I talk
question
to Misha.
themselves.
So we are working on Jiangshi, second
Mhm.
printing. We need new writers to tell new stories in the setting. And so I was like, I bet me should be great. I bet, she's not a mediocre white dude. So we should talk to her. And but I had that moment where I was like, oh, I got to have my shit together. If I'm going to send her an email, it's got to be very professional. It's got to be very organized. It's got to have like the scope of the project already, like, none of this like oh, would you be interested? Great, we'll think of the details later. It's like I gotta have all my stuff together before I contact Misha. And amazingly and generously, you said, yes, sure, I'd love to. So thank you for being part of the
Man,
project.
ours.
But so that's you were part of that email was like, if you need to see the game, here's some links to the game, or if you want to like, yeah, we can give you the print on demand files, and you can see all the content yourself. And you're like, oh no, I do not need any help.
Yeah, I got
I
it.
already know this
I've
game.
got the game. We played the game. It's a great
Right,
game.
right. So that long interlude there is like what I wanted to ask you about. Like, how did you come to this game specifically, and like, like what, or how did
um,
you come to Jiangshi first? Because you didn't need me to tell you what it was. You knew what it was.
I have followed Banana Jan's career for a while. We
Cool.
know each other. We're friends with each other. I was at their wedding.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, yeah. So like I've known their work for a while. So when I backed it when the first edition came out, and so I had it and played it. It was like, yeah, this is cool. I like this. Food is one of my passions,
Mm.
so like any kind of game where like food is involved is like an instant like yes, please, thank you. Um, and so yeah, I'd seen it before. I'd played it a couple of times. Had it on my shelf. So yeah.
Awesome. So I want to ask you about what you did. Like, what was your what's your adventure about? And I know like what story are you telling? What's the haunting tale? Or maybe that's not
Uh,
the term for it. That's the other game. I'm getting confused. But the what's your story? What's your scenario that you're working on for the new book?
so I did a riff. I'm an army brat. My dad was in the army for 20 years. My mom was in the army for a while before I was born. We grew up on bases all over the place. Um, and one of the things that my dad had a stint in Korea in the like late 80s. Korea still has tons of US bases and they still have tons of GIs going there, spending
Yeah.
a year or two, coming back. And they bring back influences, and the influences go both ways. And so one of the things that like I love about that fusion that's come out of it is Korean fried chicken. So that was the jumping off point for me. Like I tried to like make it like yes, we're gonna, but like that world doesn't. I don't have as much experience with that world. Whereas GIs coming back from Korea, GIs with Korean brides, we had like tons of neighbors like that over the years in bases. And so like them sharing their foods and them like, all right, I want to make this dish, but I can't find the ingredients that I would use at
Mm.
home. So I'm gonna adapt it using the ingredients I can find. And that kind of thing kind of is like, all right, well, that's the basis. And it's like, okay, well, clearly it wouldn't be a Chinese Jiangshi that's attacking these people. It's going to be a Korean one. So I was like, all right, well, Korean legends. And I ended up with the Kumihimo, which is a kind of like Kitsune in that it's a fox spirit with a lot of tails, but it's pretty malevolent. Eats people, sucks their knowledge out, and in some legends you can be transformed into one. So I'm like, okay, we're gonna go with that interpretation. And then so yeah, it's like, all right, so we've got a black GI, his Korean wife. Yeah, sure, mom came too. That's great. And then we've got like the next generation of this mixed Korean black girl trying to like find her way. So she got a little of the mysticism from dad's side, a little bit of mysticism from mom's side, and it's combining into her. And that's kind of what formed the basis of it. It's like, all right, where do we set it? Let's go with just outside of a army base that the dad's retired from. Yeah, I don't know any place like that. I haven't grown up there at all. It's fine. And yeah, just kind of went from there. It's like I find it's easiest to write with a basis of something
Yeah,
as opposed to like just you can research the hell out of things, but unless it's easier if you have like a kernel of something that is your experience
absolutely.
that you can work through.
Absolutely.
Uh,
I mean, I love the combination of the themes that you've brought together here because it's we were looking for people who had different takes on the scenario. I mean, there's 18 scenarios in the original
yeah,
set, so like we've covered some of the stories in the world, but there are many stories in the world, and this specific thing that is so close to your own experience is it's perfect. It's great. I'm a big fan of new story in this way and the personal connection like yeah, there's definitely like stuff that gets worked in, right? It's like the I always think about like this is such a dumb example, but like it is I live in a shotgun house, and so it's
mm-hmm.
for people who don't know what a shotgun is, the rooms are all like in a line
Yep.
down the center. There's it's not a square, it's a
It's a
long
rectangle. It's a
rectangle.
long,
It's a
skinny
long
rectangle.
rectangle.
Yep.
But it's only so wide, it's like 25 feet wide. And so like anytime I'm like this area effect covers 25 feet. I'm like, I know, I look around and I'm like, I know how big that
That's
is,
about how big it is.
so that's such a dumb example, but like it is the one that came to mind where it's like my own experience works into things in weird ways, right? And it's like it doesn't matter what I'm writing about. Like it's that very visceral, like how much area of effect do I want this to have? I can look around my any room in my house because they're all the same size, and have that sort of that visual reference. But that's like I said, stupid example. But like for you, like I grew up on army bases. I've known these people like this. I've known this
Mhm.
sort of blended family heritage sort of thing happening. I've seen it happen. Like that is perfect. That's perfect. So um you don't have to reveal the end of the story or whatever, but like what are some of the okay, so you got this great setup, but like what's the trouble that comes in? Is it
Oh yeah, so
um
two new people come into the area that
mm,
don't seem to really have any connection to any of the other people in the area, other than hey, they're Korean and they seem to be like it seems to be a mother and a daughter. They come into the scenario, and then like things start happening. Hey, so and so hasn't come in for his weekly, meal. What's going on? Or so and so was went AWOL from base. What's up with that? He's super responsible. He would never do that. And just little things like that keep happening. And then eventually it leads back to uh, the like, oh, stuff starts happening more and more, or like it gets closer and closer to the restaurant and the family's home. And
so they are
they
also
have to
running a
deal with it.
restaurant. That's
Yes, they're ready. They just the wife and grandmother decided to open a restaurant that again brings in that like kind of fusion of hey, you're in the South, these are the ingredients you got, but with a Korean flair, and vice versa. It's like all right,
mhm.
we've got Southern ingredients, but we don't want to make them Southern way. We're going to use and kind of that interplay of the food cultures.
Okay, I like it. I like it. I think it's pretty great. And um is there like a so I mean that's the mystery, right? You got to track
Yeah,
the
yeah,
supernatural malevolence to its source, I guess is the
yeah.
scenario. Awesome. Awesome. uh well, I look forward to reading it when it's finally completed and we get all this published. This project is on crowdfunding right now,
Yep.
as we record this. So if that sounds interesting to you,
I
go
think it's
check it out.
funded but not
Uh,
complete, so you have plenty of time
uh,
to still back.
if it got funded, it wasn't funded last night. So if it got
Oh,
funded
was it not?
overnight, that would be incredible. But at the time of recording, but
Oh yeah, oh, it was like half funded. That's what it was.
it reached 50% overnight.
Yeah.
Great, love that. That was what I was looking looking for. Okay. Thanks for that live update, which people will see next week.
Yeah, which hopefully it'll be a lot further in by the time you actually see
Right.
this.
When people actually see it, it may actually be funded. I shouldn't have said anything, and then people could have been like, "Is it already funded?" and clicked over, and there it would have been. It would have been amazing. Now I can edit it later and make it look like you said
We'll
that.
make it look like that.
Right. Uh, all right, great. I'm so happy that you were part of the project, and I'm so happy that you found this hook in and you brought this, yourself into the project in this way, because that's kind of like what the project has been about, bringing in those like it's almost like what you said at the very beginning about like who we haven't heard from yet, and so this is the we haven't heard your voice yet in the Jiangshi story. So
That's the
you
kid.
get to yeah,
The
it's there's
occasional arms come flying
mhm.
in.
Great. Is there anything else that you want to say about it or working on it and that
No, it
before we
was a
move
lot of
on?
fun. I sat down to write one story, and what came out was not the story that came out. It's like I like the story that did come out, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's not where
That's
I started.
that's that's so often
Yeah.
that's how it happens. That's how it happens. So I wanted to ask you about what else you might be working on that that is coming soon. There's a list of cool projects on you. You said your website may not be
Yeah,
entirely up to date,
I
but
think everything except for Nightingales has already come out. I need to update that. Nightingales is our LARP about women
Mm,
in times of war, specifically nurses.
okay, okay.
So we've got
Obviously,
like the base
Nightingales. Got it.
scenario is Casablanca in World War II. We've got one written that's Spanish Civil War and influenza wards in Cuba. Um, and so it's a neat little LARP. It's 4-person LARP. You can have a facilitator separate or be one of the players, but you kind of like go through the time, not necessarily the timeline of the war itself, but like different beats, and like as your nurses are getting closer and learning about each other more and interacting with NPCs that are from that are both soldiers and civilians, and in the trenches with you, and eventually we're going to have a bunch of, the plan is to get a bunch of other people to also come up with scenarios for wars that they might have connections with, or I think there's might be a couple of sci-fi kind of ones in the works too. I'm working on that with Mo uh, and Rachel, and so yeah, that'll be coming up. Haunted West already came out.
Hunter
Very
West already
cool.
came out.
Yep.
I
That came out for last year, 2 years
it
ago, 2 years
it
ago, I think.
yeah, because it won awards last year at the Ennies,
Yes.
so it had
Uh,
to have come out the year before that.
and then Aegon's already coming. Aegon is Greek mythology. Your demigods are heroes. You're playing that. Night Rain. I did a sensitivity edit for that. Was
Sounds like vampires.
yeah, I think it's been. I really got to update this. It's been a little while, but yeah, it's like kind of. It was definitely a vampire kind of aesthetic to it, if
Mm,
it wasn't vampire specifically. And it was like things that came out in the night. So that was and ruled the night, which was where the rain, and yeah, it was cool. I liked it. It was a neat little game. And yeah, I think that's all the stuff that's out.
yeah. So
Uh,
I mean, I don't want to open a whole new line of inquiry, but like the LARP thing is I I understand LARPs like intellectually, but I don't understand them like any way other way, right? So could
so
in my self-growth process, I'm trying to learn to appreciate LARPs the way people like them. So like what, because like the pitch. Okay, so you're nurses and it's the
mhm,
Spanish influenza and you're
mhm,
going to watch all these soldiers die as the war
possibly.
continues.
Mhm.
That doesn't sound like any fun to me, Misha. So like that's sort of like a wall that I always run up against. So like what
So
is
part of it
the
is you're making connections with the other nurses. Part of it is, yes, you're
okay.
making connections with the soldiers that you're treating, but you're also making connections with the civilians that are in the world around you. And maybe you're trying to fall in love a little. Maybe you're trying to just get out of the strictures that women had placed on them at the time period. Maybe you're rebelling against something else. Maybe you're a widow and you're kind of like trying to find your a meaning of life again. So those are the different roles that like we kind of built into it. It's like, hey, like these are the different reasons that people came to nursing, especially in wartime, because my mom was a nurse for years, and when she originally joined the army, she was an army nurse, and this was like late Vietnam era. And Mo's I think grandmother was a nurse in World War II, and Rachel, I think her grandmother was also a nurse in World War II. So we all had that connection to it
Yeah.
again. Of like, okay, well, we know what nurses are like and why they do the things they do. So how can we kind of emulate that feeling without like uh having people go through actual nursing school.
Sure.
Yeah, like we didn't like, okay, you're not actually nurses, we're not gonna like make you inject people, and it's
Right.
meant to be played in like 3 hours,
Yeah.
so it's not a super long LARP. Some LARPs though, yeah, are super like, hey, I'm gonna get dressed up and I'm gonna go play a fairy in the woods for like 8 hours for
Like eight
every other
hours.
month.
3 days. What are you talking about? 8 hours.
Yeah, 3 days.
Uh
I'm gonna go. Hey, we're gonna be wizarding students at a magical castle somewhere.
right, right.
So yeah, I mean, there's it's kind of almost rule, was it 34? Like if there's an idea, there's
Mm,
probably a game or a LARP for it. So just yeah, there's if you've got a niche that you're looking for, I'm sure you can find something that will fit
yeah.
into it.
Uh, I understand better what you say by putting the focus on like the interactions between the players and sort of like that, you know, it's always sort of like what you bring, like we were talking about almost at the beginning of the conversation, talking about like, you know, your style of play and like what skills you're
Mhm.
picking to be your character or whatever. It's a similar process, but like, you know, if I'm going to play the recently widowed nurse who's like just looking for companionship and like here's a call for nurses and like, well, I guess I'll serve my community in this
Mhm.
way, and then you go in and you're sort of like open to meeting people but not really, but you've got this sort of like, do I want to tell these people that like, oh, my husband's already dead, you know, like I can see that as like sort of, and then it lasts 3 hours and then you
Mhm.
shake hands with everybody, good game, you know, and then you go on.
Yeah.
Like I can see the appeal of that sort of process more than like I'm going to be sad about all of the death, because that's you know,
Yeah.
there are also those games like you said, if
Yes,
there's
there are
if
definitely those games.
uh so I understand it in those terms. So thank you for helping me. Again, in my long life, maybe I'll LARP someday.
Yeah, yeah. Come to Metatopia. There's plenty of LARPs.
Yeah, Metatopia, that's we might that's always on the list, that one, and what's the other, Big Bad Con. Those are the two that
Mhm,
people tell me
mhm,
that I
mhm,
should
mhm.
come to.
Yeah.
um uh I see, as a business owner, like cons are for work. Like I go to cons to sell product, and that is not as much happening at the cons where you go to play. So
Yeah.
it is, yeah, it's a con. I never went to a con until I had to like books to sell. So it's like it's not a, I don't know, it's compartmentalized, I guess, in my brain. Like cons
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
working things, and so like why would I go to Metatopia where there's not a dealer's room? It's to play the games, play the games.
Yeah. To
But
see what's
maybe
coming up, to see,
that's
to meet
right.
people,
That's
to
right.
network, to
That's right.
discuss things. Yeah.
I was at a I was at a local like market event last night at the time of recording last night, and you know, we had our games there, and my sister writes novels, so like we were sharing a booth together, and she had her novels and we had our games, and then there was another game store that was like across the way, and they were selling For the Queen, right, which is this,
Mm-hmm.
so like that's like a game, and I don't even know why I brought this up. I was going to make a point about this, but like it's like a well, I've lost my point, so I don't even know what I was bringing up For the Queen for. But oh, that's what it was, because when I talked to Jason Morningstar on one of these interviews, he was telling me about how like he got to play For the Queen, and then he was like, I don't think we want to publish it, and so somebody else got to publish it, right? But he was at
Yeah.
Metatopia when he got to play it, and then there was business made, so like
Hmm.
I got to think of it that
Yeah.
way. Shot, you
Yeah. I
know,
mean,
find the cool
Metatopia,
new designs.
it's all playtesting at Metatopia. It's like there
Right.
are very few games that I would consider finished. Most, like there are some that are like, yeah, we're getting close. We're trying to do the last few tweaks. There are some that's like, look, we've had this bonkers idea, and we've scratched to the back like 3 note cards and a napkin, and we want to see if it works. So can you work with us?
Mhm.
And then yeah, that it's a great place to like kind of like a kind of have your finger on the pulse of like where game design is going.
Right.
um and but also like, yeah, you can meet new people, you can see new games, you can see new game designers, and kind of go from there.
So when is that? That's in
November,
late
it's like the
November.
first week in November,
All
the
right. Well,
first second weekend of November, the 7th through the 10th.
of November.
Yes.
Okay. Well, maybe there's time to come this year's yet for me. I don't know.
Yeah,
We'll
they
see.
haven't even put the hotel block out, so you got time.
All right. Well, we'll maybe we'll consider it again. Every year we consider it. We'll consider it again this year. So before we get out of here, what is where can people find more about you? So I was looking up your website, and my search engine was like, didn't you mean DreamWorks? And I was like,
No,
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 I
I
did
did
not
not.
mean DreamWorks. So where can people find more about you and your work around about the internet? All the things you've talked about, where are the places to find you? follow you.
The best place is probably still my website. I do have a couple of Tumblrs. One that's
A
Black Girl
couple of
Gameworks.
tumblers.
Well, one is Black Girl Gameworks, where it's like the stuff that I've done for gaming, and then the other is Elf Girl Craftworks, where it's more like some of my sewing projects, my quilting projects, and costuming and that kind of thing. I've been doing a couple of weird uh, Victorian silhouettes with African prints projects, which has been
Okay.
kind of like, it's like, all right, like these things would have existed at the time, so there is very well a chance that someone could have made this outfit. Whether someone did is a different question, but they could have. And so it's like, hey, let's, because the Victorians were not all like black and white like everybody thinks they are, and it was not all boring colors. They loved like vivid, vibrant colors and prints, and that was the whole reason a lot of the African wax prints that we have today exist, is because they were trying to find a way to copy batiks and how to and bring those colorful things into their everyday lives. So I've been doing a lot of projects with that. Like I have a thing next week that I'm going to. It's like a maker thing where it's like, oh yeah, we're gonna like get together and show off the stuff we've sewed, and so I'm looking forward to that. I'm doing some editing for a couple of projects that are coming up. Um, Whitney I can say that Delaglio is putting out a second edition of The Old, the Cold, the Bold, which is very cool. It's a, hey, you can play criminals in a gig economy, and it's like Uber but for assassins, you know.
Okay.
and it's a kind of
Okay.
neat little game. It's kind of fun to play, and so
that app may already exist.
I mean, I can't say it.
You can't say, yeah.
It might.
It might.
But yeah, the first rule of
The first rule of the Assassins app is you don't talk about the Assassins. Right.
And
Lovely.
what else did I have coming up? I think those are the big ones. Finishing up, yeah, trying to like we're fleshing out the next couple of books for Urin yet still. Yeah, just kind of seeing where stuff goes.
Cool. And so blackgirldreamworks.com
or Black Girl Gameworks.
Gameworks. Sorry,
yes.
that's right. Yeah. I see it. It got into my head. Gameworks, and that's the. And then any socials that you like to be followed on, or other than the Tumblr, like not
yeah, the Tumblr is the one that I it's weird. So like I miss G+, okay? I'm gonna throw it out there. I miss being able to do long form content in a single place. Like TikTok doesn't work for me because I don't want to make videos. Neither does YouTube. I don't want to make videos. Damn it.
Yeah.
But like also you can't really, like I had Twitter. I don't really use it as much anymore. But yeah, it's harder to do nuanced conversation in Twitter. So a lot of I found Tumblr has actually a pretty good way. It's like, yes, you can have nuance and you can kind of see, like, yes, this is the whole thing I said. If you want to pick apart a single part of what I said, fine. But the context of the whole thing I said is right there. You're not just talking about one chunk of a tweet that nobody else has read the before and after. It's like, no, you're seeing the whole thing I said. And so I find Tumblr is really good about that for that kind of discussion. It's like, yes, I want to talk about this thing and I want to get it off my chest. I want to have an actual discussion about it. And the interactions have been quite lovely there. And the blocking tools are great, so yeah, always useful.
important part of social media.
Right? So I have a Twitter account. I don't use it. It's BG Gameworks. I just kind of keep it as a placeholder in case sanity ever returns there.
Sure.
I can't remember to check Blue Sky. I have accounts there.
It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, it's like
you don't have to list them all. Just where.
Yeah, the biggest ones are Tumblr and my website. If you're trying to look for me.
There you go. That's how I found. It wasn't hard. Search the name and I found it. And
I'm the only one in the country, at least. So like, if you search my name, you'll either find me or somebody related to me, probably. So it's a very distinct name.
Yeah. Well, Misha, thank you so much for being my guest today on Wet Ink Wednesday, talking about Jiangshi and all your other projects. I'm glad we got to reminisce about Crunchy Games and hear about you're slowly converting. Like everybody I talk to that LARPs will contribute someday, and I'll have to thank all of you for finally turning me into a LARPer. Um, uh, but just thank you for being my guest
Yeah,
today, sharing your time and all your experience. So,
it was
uh,
fun.
and thank you everyone who watched the video. We'll see you on the internet or at Metatopia, perhaps.
Or Metatopia.